Hey everybody, I'm Nicole.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Sarah, and together we're the co-founders of Whale Tales, a living library of cetacean stories.
And today we are diving into the fun, but definitely interesting world of ecotoxicology.
So sit back and enjoy as we dive right in.
Today, we are very excited to welcome our guest, Dr. Anaïs Remili.
Anaïs is an ecotoxicologist doing her postdoc at SFU, or Simon Fraser University, for those of you not in the lower mainland of Vancouver, studying killer whale health and pollution impacts.
We talked to Anaïs about her research, the impacts of contaminants in cetaceans, plus a bunch of other things that are a bit less of a bummer than the world of ecotoxicology these days.
Yeah, so here we go. Okay, now we're here with Anaïs, who's an ecotoxicologist, and we don't know
cool name,
what that means. So, to start off, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what ecotoxicology is and how that relates to you being on this podcast?
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
So my name is Anaïs Remili. I am French, so the name. And so yeah, I'm an ecotoxicologist. And basically we can cut that word into two, eco and toxicology. So I basically study the contaminants, so the pollutants inside our environment. And I have a particular focus on marine mammals and did most of my PhD on killer whales.
Hey, that's cool. What we like to talk about.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I apologize if I completely missed it when you were saying that, because I was still trying to break the word down visually in my head. So sometimes that means I'm missing. Where did you study, and sort of what sorts of things when you're doing your thesis on killers? What can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, of course. I can go as far as you want me to go back.
Yeah.
So I said I'm French. I was born in the French Alps, but developed a strong affinity for whales and killer whales in particular when I saw Free Willy, and I think I was 3 at that time.
Amazing.
And I was at my nanny's, and I just fell in love with whales. And at the time, my mom was a school teacher, and I was often at school with her, often till late, because she was also the school principal in a very small village, so I had tons to do. And so to pass time, I would just Google killer whales and dolphins, and made little notes about them, and drew them, and totally nerded out on whales. Amazing. From a very young age.
We are meant to be best friends.
Sounds familiar.
Yep.
So my mom actually found those notes. It was a little embarrassing. Years later, I was basically copying things that I would find on Wikipedia back then. I think I was 8, and just everything I was drawing was whales or dolphins related. So my mom had literally piles and piles of drawings from me. But then, that passion never really died. So I kept on being a whale nerd. And in the meantime, after I graduated from high school, I knew that I had to speak English eventually, because I knew that research is done in English. And so I left France to do 1 year of exchange in the US, and I ended up in Michigan. Originally, I wanted to go to Seattle, because that's where Free Willy happens.
Well, yeah.
But life has a funny way to make things happen for you that were not in store necessarily in your mind. And I ended up in Michigan. And so that was really fun, though, because I got to learn English. And I went back home knowing how to speak English a bit better. And I went back home. I wanted to stay in the US, but I went back home because education is free in France for me. And it was not going to be free in the US, unfortunately.
No.
So I went back home, and I was a little bummed at the time. I really wanted to come back to North America, but benefited from my free education and got my bachelor's in France. And then I went on to a master's in Europe, studying everything marine biology and marine environment related. And that's kind of how I fell in love with contaminants. I think my first little aha moment with contaminants was when I was on the Mediterranean Sea at the end of my undergrad. I did an internship studying whales and dolphins in Italy. And at that point, it was
Wow.
kind of like my first experience with whales and dolphins. I was so hyped.
We don't really talk about the Mediterranean very much, and it's always exciting when we do. So I feel like I want to go on a total tangent when we there, but I'll let you finish. Sorry, I'm
it is
just
such a
fangirling
beautiful place. Like the Mediterranean is so nice, and like Italy was so fun. Lots of good pizza and pasta. And yeah, lots of cool whales as well. No killer whales where I was, but we would regularly go out and see tons of different animals like common dolphins, fin whales, and sometimes even the goosebeak whale, I believe they're called now. And they have kind of a local population there in the Ligurian Sea. And I remember thinking about contaminants because, as you must know, the Mediterranean Sea is surrounded by lots of people in Europe, in North Africa, in the Middle East. And there's a ton of pollution that ends up back into the Mediterranean Sea. And so I remember being on the boat for a 2-day trip at some point. We were sampling some of these goosebeak beaked whales. And during a 2-day trip, we collected, I believe at the time it was 27 big plastic bags and discarded helium balloons. And I thought that was really sad. And that really got me thinking about what trace we leave as humans into our environments. And that really got me thinking about contaminants. And I went into my master's full of beautiful whale memories, but also a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth from all the pollution that I witnessed. And so that really got me into ecotoxicology. And I was lucky enough to get a master thesis. So in Europe, the way that it goes, it's a little different from North America. In North America, when you do a master's, you typically have like a research project. You choose an advisor who's going to be mentoring you on your research project. And then sometimes you take some classes on the side. But the way that it goes in Europe is that you'll typically have semesters of classes, kind of like undergrad, and you have 3 of those, and then at the end you do a master's thesis, but it's like a very condensed master's thesis, so it's like a semester basically for you to like do the research, write a thesis, and defend it. Which is a bit crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a bit less long than some of those North American theses, obviously. But I did that. I was lucky enough to do a really cool project on humpback whales from Antarctica. And it was really fun. We used stable isotopes, so I got to do all the cool things in the lab, and that's how I fell in love with lab work, because I'm a lab rat. I absolutely adore lab work. I call it making potions, because you just sort of mix things. Just like little kid me is so happy about making potions. But yeah, we found some of the contaminants that have been banned for decades from production. We still found them in the blubber of humpback whales from Antarctica, and I thought that was really sad. And that was a really important finding. I was quite shocked to see that we could still detect those, even though like these whales just eat krill in the middle of the Antarctic Ocean. Like there shouldn't be any pollution there. It's supposed to be a pristine environment. And so that got me thinking, and back when I was in Belgium extracting my whale blubber, my humpback whale blubber, we got a sample in the lab that was not from my project, but I ended up extracting it along with my humpback whale samples, and it actually ended up in a publication a few years later. It was from a baby killer whale. It had died. I think it had gotten separated from its mother after a storm. I think it washed up on the coast of Germany at the time, and they sent it to the lab for analysis. And I ended up putting it in the machine with all of my humpback whale samples. And the way that it goes, so when you put these samples in the machine, you get an extract, where basically you extract all these contaminants that are stuck in the fat of the animals, and then you condense it, so you make your potions, and basically you end up with a tiny little vial that you then put into a big machine that's called a gas chromatographer with a mass spectrometer. And basically what it gives you is a chromatogram that has a bunch of peaks, and those peaks tell you the concentration of different elements, different molecules, and in that case, they're contaminants. And
you have unlocked so many terms that were long dead and buried in my head from organic chem.
And please let me know if there's anything that, because like I talk about these things every day, but if anything is unclear, do let me know, please.
No, it's wonderful. It's just I didn't know that my brain had retained some of that.
You're getting some flashbacks.
Yeah.
Nice.
Haven't thought about chromatographs in 20 years. Yeah.
I know. Well, sadly or not sadly, they're a big part of my my daily routine.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy peaks, and especially those are very neat. Like, I don't know, when you're immersed in it, it's very satisfying. Mm-hmm. But so I was going about just integrating my peaks, which basically is a fancy term for just highlighting the peak on the chromatogram. And when we got to the killer whale, so the baby killer whale one, the peak was so intense and so saturated that we could not actually measure it with the instrument because it was so strong. And so I went to see my supervisor there, and I was like, I don't really know what to do. This is the first time I deal with something that's this concentrated. And we ended up having to dilute the samples. I believe it was 100,000 times. Whoa. So we took like the tiniest little drop, diluted it into more solvents just to carry it through the machine. And that's when we were finally able to measure it accurately, to measure those peaks. And so it turns out that this animal was so contaminated, and it was a baby, and that was really sad because it was found so stranded, unfortunately, with some milk still in its stomach. So it had only been feeding on its mom's milk. And it was so contaminated. It was crazy. That really opened up my eyes about the crazy differences that we can see between killer whales and other animals in our oceans, like humpback whales, for example. And we know this is all due to what the killer whales eat. There might be a geographical factor, of course, because Germany is a bit more contaminated than Antarctica, but it's mostly caused by the diet. And in the case of this little baby killer whale, it ingested the contaminants that we measured in its blubber from its mother's milk. Because in fact, mothers, when they're nursing their calves, they need to make super rich, fat-rich milk for their babies so that they can grow quickly and be healthy. But to do that, to make this milk, they need to mobilize the fat that they have in their blubber to convert it basically into some very fat-rich milk. And by doing that, they also pass down most of the contaminants that they have stored in their blubber. And so these contaminants that I will introduce in a few minutes, I guess, they're very lipophilic, so they bind themselves to fat. And so the killer whales ingest them from their diet, and then they store them in their fat. And when the moms use the fat to make this milk for their calves, they pass down up to 70% of the contaminants that they have stored in the blubber. And so we never knew the cause of death for this young calf, but the levels of contaminants that we measured were off the charts. And so that was a really sad day in the lab when we found that out. Mm-hmm. And it really got me thinking. That's kind of how I ended up doing my PhD on contaminants and killer whales. I really started to harass basically everyone I had ever met to ask if they knew about any opportunities. And I was really lucky to be connected with the person who became my PhD advisor, Professor McKinney at McGill University. And so I ended up coming back to North America in Montreal in Canada. And that's where I did my PhD.
Woohoo! Represent McGill. I didn't go there, but my dad did.
Oh, nice. It's a really cool university and a very fun city.
You spent all this time learning English and went to Quebec.
Yeah.
To the least anglophone place in North America. Exactly. Yeah. Luckily for me, though, the research was still in English. Okay. So I didn't learn it for nothing. But it's... My dad had a good laugh about that.
Yeah. And I think, from my experience anyways, like working in anything involving like any government science, especially being bilingual in Canada is a huge advantage.
Yeah, huge thing. Yes.
Yeah, it turns out it was a huge help, and I had no idea because Canada, to be honest, was never really on my radar, and neither was Quebec.
Yeah.
I just thought for the longest time that I would remain in Europe. I just thought North America was just not going to be for me. And if it was ever going to be North America, it would be somewhere in the United States. And that opened up a whole new world for me. And I'm so glad it did, because I made so many friends in Canada. I met my fiance at McGill. Yeah.
Well, we are biased, but we think Canada is pretty great.
It is pretty amazing. Yeah. I'm trying to stay there as long as I can, so fingers crossed.
So you're still in Montreal, right? Just because you mentioned like 50 different places.
Yeah, I've lived in a few places. Yeah. I now live in Vancouver. So I'm still in Canada, but I finally made it to Free Willy Land. I'm in British Columbia. Thank you. And I absolutely adore Vancouver. It's a beautiful city, beautiful scenery, and lots of beautiful whales. So that's great. Yay. I'm in paradise.
So being here, are you going out? What research are you doing has you based in Vancouver? Are you going out on the boats and getting samples, or what's happening? Are you seeing the killer whales that you want to see?
So I do less often than I want to, but I do still.
Us too.
Yeah, unfortunately, like when you're trying to combine a lot of modeling, a lot of lab work, and sometimes a little bit of field work, it can get a little tricky. But I still go out every now and then. I'm lucky enough to have some really nice colleagues that take pity on me and take me out on the boat with them, basically. But recently, funny enough, I have been out on the water quite a bit to sample seal poo. So I can tell you all about it, but before then, maybe I'll tell you what I'm doing here in Vancouver. Because initially, seal poo was not part of my... I didn't think it was going to be part of my journey. But I ended up moving to Vancouver to do my postdoc after I graduated from McGill. And this postdoc is about understanding the impacts of contaminants on the health of killer whales. So all of my PhD was to understand the impact of diet on contaminants in the North Atlantic killer whales. And then I thought the most logical step progressing from that would be to look at the actual impact of the contaminants on the health of the whales. And so we're doing that by measuring steroid hormones and metabolomics, which are basically some assays that you conduct that measure everything that the metabolism produces. And then if you compare it among individuals that have different concentrations of contaminants, it tells you kind of a lot, actually, about potential effects of these contaminants. So the plan was for me to do that on killer whales, and it still is the plan. It's very much happening. But in the meantime, I got interested in a whole bunch of different projects, and one of them ended up being seal poo. And we go out to sample these feces because we want to understand the impact of oil spills and heavy boat traffic on the environment. So diesel and oil in general have some of these compounds called polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PAH, and we can detect them, we can measure them. And so my lab is currently measuring all these contaminants in various samples. So they go from like salmon to other fish to seals through their feces, and even in killer whale poo through some of our collaborations with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And so it's really fun to go sample seal poo because you basically have to launch yourself on the hauling rock without disturbing the seals too much. They're usually gone by the time you arrive, but we approach the rocks very slowly, and then we sort of jump on them, and then you look for samples. Sometimes you smell them before you see them, and then we scoop them up with little wooden spoons, and then we're on our merry way back to the lab to analyze those samples later. So it's been lots of fun because I ended up going out a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Just not to see too many killer whales. They've been kind of not really there for the last month, at least in Howe Sound, where we do most of our sampling. They finally come back, though, so I kind of hope that we're going back out soon. So hopefully we can see a few whales out there.
So I guess, like, would this then combine because the killer whales are eating the seals? Would that contribute to any of your further research on killer whale contaminants, or are you looking more ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a good question. This one is more ecosystem wide, and I think the focus is mostly on resident killer whales. And it is not for the project that I am leading, even though I'll be collaborating on that project. But it's just a ton of fun to get out on the water. But it will be it will be ecosystem based.
Okay.
And just trying to understand what the impact is on northern resident and southern resident killer whales.
Yeah.
But yeah, for some of my project, we're looking at killer whales from the North Atlantic, from the North Pacific, and then hopefully from the Southern Ocean as well. So we're trying to look at a lot of different populations to try to understand what the impacts of these contaminants can be. And so when I talk about these contaminants, they're those that we call in the media the forever chemicals. So there's a few of them. The most talked about right now, they're called PFAS, and they're those that were put in Teflon pans, etc. And in if you're from the Pacific Northwest, in your Arc'teryx jackets, from a few years ago, they were still using PFAS in them. And so we look at those. We also look at pesticides that have been banned for a few decades, but unfortunately they do not degrade in the environment. So those are like your DDTs, for example. They were famous in the United States because they almost caused the disappearance of the bald eagles in the 70s. And then PCBs, which are also quite famous if you're familiar a little bit with contaminants. They were mass-produced starting from the 1930s, and then in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, we realized that they were actually not degrading in the environment, and they were accumulating along the food web and doing something that we call biomagnification, which basically means that these contaminants are amplifying at each step of the food web. So they start in the small plankton, they accumulate, and they bind themselves to fat, to the lipids. And then when the plankton gets eaten by a fish, the fish will accumulate not only what's in the environment, but also everything that was stored inside the plankton. And so you go through one cycle of amplification of these contaminants. And then when the fish gets eaten either by a bigger fish or by a seal or by a whale, you go through another round of amplification. And so because killer whales are at the very top of the food web, they've accumulated everything that's already been amplified through the food web. And so that's why they have the highest amount of contaminants measured in the animal kingdom.
Wow.
Yeah. Not great news for killer whales.
No.
But yeah, the research that we did during my PhD showed that in the North Atlantic, we didn't really know what was going on, especially on the western side of the North Atlantic, so close to Canada and the rest of North America. And we measured the contaminants in about 200 killer whales from across the Atlantic, and we found that those in the western part of the North Atlantic are actually the most contaminated, and they include the killer whales that are progressively going into the Arctic because of the loss of sea ice. They have access to nice big and fatty prey like seals, narwhals, and belugas. So that's great news for their nutrition. That's not great news for contaminants. And we actually showed that these whales in eastern Canada and the Canadian Arctic, they have levels that are like twice above the highest threshold that we have for risks of reproductive failure. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all these killer whales cannot reproduce anymore. It just means that their concentrations are this high. They're incredibly, incredibly high, and they're potentially facing risks, but we don't really know to what extent. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to elucidate with my postdoc research, trying to understand what effects we have on the hormones and on the metabolism in general. Like, can we see a lot of oxidative stress or not? So those are the type of things that we're trying to understand now.
Yeah.
That is a lot. That is a lot. I was going to try and add an adjective to it, but just that is...
No, it's just a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
How, because it's a lot, and it's also a lot of really sad.
Yes.
and overwhelming news. What do you do to not be sad and overwhelmed all the time?
It's a really good question. It's sometimes, I'll be honest, it's not the best time.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, when we found that those killer whales in the west of the North Atlantic were that contaminated, honestly, at first I thought it was a mistake because they're so high in the Arctic. We don't really know where they go most of the time. So some of our colleagues hypothesized that they travel to the middle of the Atlantic and then go to the Arctic. They kind of move back and forth. So they don't live in the Arctic the whole time. But I kind of naively thought that they'd be a little less contaminated. But we double-checked all of our data, and the data was accurate. So it's a bit depressing. And I think what's a bit depressing as well is when you see that we have the tools to curb that issue and to really start making some changes, but they're not really happening at the political level. Yeah. And that's a bit sad as well. But I think for myself personally, the way that I get past it is like to talk about it and to be as vocal as I can on social media and elsewhere, doing talks to try to shed light on this issue and try to tell people what they can do. And I know we're jumping a bit ahead because I know you like to end with a call to action, but
we can throw it in
anywhere. It can go anywhere.
Yeah, perfect. Maybe we can stop the bad news, and there are things that can be done at the country level, but also at the individual level if we want to help our populations to recover and prosper. We know that these contaminants accumulate in the blubber of these animals through their life, and they're passed down to the babies through the milk, and all of this is not great news. And we know that. So I'm going to start with more bad news, and then I'm going to start with what you can.
Well, that's okay.
But it's not. Unfortunately, it's not the only threat that these animals face. You know, they also have to find enough food to eat, and sometimes it's not straightforward. For example, the southern resident killer whales, we know that they rely on Chinook for a lot of their food, and we know that it's a limiting factor, and sometimes these animals don't have enough to eat, so that's an added stress for them. And we know that vessel disturbance, noise, etc. also adds more stress. So these animals are not just facing the threat of pollution. They're also facing the threat of having enough food to eat. So whether that is caused by overfishing or climate change, that is a reality, and that is another stressor, and vessel disturbance as well. But what people can do is really try to think about this as a multifaceted problem and to try to tackle it from different points. So, for example, it's a little difficult as one individual to go change the laws to ban certain chemicals, but there are things that you can look for. And for example, for those PFAS that are not completely banned yet, you can definitely look for alternatives for your house that are PFAS free. So anything that's like PFOA free or PFAS free is good. So more and more the industry is trying to go in that direction, because there are people that are willing to really look for these items that do not contain any PFAS. For example, I know that some, if I'm not mistaken, I believe like brands like Arc'teryx and Patagonia have phased them out. I hope I'm right, but I do believe that is the case. So something to double check, but there are brands that are really trying to ban these chemicals. So selectively going for these brands could be good. And we can also be a little mindful about our seafood choices and our consumption, because we know that it is a multifaceted problem. And if we go for something that is sustainable in terms of seafood choices, that is also an option to help the whales. Another thing that we can do at home is, of course, to be mindful of what we spray in our yards. I know that we're ending the summer, and we probably had like a beautiful yard and beautiful flowers in the summer. But of course, we looking at again the label and trying to see things that are biodegradable or things that are a bit healthier for our yards is also going to make a difference, because in the end, all the products that we spray are ending up into the ocean through the rivers and rainfall events, etc. And of course, the last thing that we can do is, of course, to try to vote for a party that believes in these issues and is trying to do some changes. And at the country level, of course, that takes a lot of effort. It's also an international problem, unfortunately, no borders. And there is a United Nations treaty that's goal is to ban these contaminants and to make sure they're eradicated. And back when that treaty was first signed in 2001, it's called the Stockholm Convention. Its goal was to eradicate all PCBs by 2028, and we are extremely far from that. And that comes from multiple issues, because of course multiple countries don't have the same priorities or the same will to act. There are some countries that don't have the capacity to get rid of the contaminated waste that's piling up in their warehouses. And all this contaminated waste that's in the warehouses, if anything happens to the warehouse, the contaminated waste will end up back into the environment. So there's lots to do at the country level, internationally, and at the human level. But yeah, I think that going with sustainable choices and trying to be as conscientious about our actions in our own homes can help. And I think, of course, raising the issue and talking about it is a huge help, because a lot of people don't know what's going on in our environments, and they don't know how contaminated our killer whales are.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder that it's not a faraway problem. It's a right here problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, it is in humans too, These contaminants don't just end up in the killer whales. They are extremely high in those whales because they're at the very top of the food web, and they have lots of fat to keep these contaminants. And on top of that, we know from recent studies that killer whales, like other dolphins, have one gene that's inactive. It's a gene that helps to detox their bodies from some of these contaminants. So they're really kind of unlucky genetically, and they can't really detox from these contaminants. But humans can accumulate them too. And in fact, we have done a study with colleagues to try to estimate if indigenous communities in the Canadian Arctic were to consume killer whale blubber, how much of it would be safe. So we know that it's subsistence harvests, and so we calculated that, and we found that in order not to exceed the safe levels fixed by the World Health Organization, people could only consume a grain of rice worth of whale blubber a day.
Wow.
I know. And if they do more than that, which of course they need to, because a grain of rice is not, not feeding anyone.
Yeah.
If they were to consume these animals, they would exceed all these thresholds fixed by the World Health.
Wow.
And so all these contaminants are then passed down from mothers to their babies, again through the milk. That's so of course the milk is not as fatty as the killer whale milk, but it's still happening, and there is still a transfer. So it is a problem that touches everyone, not just the animals that we love and that we respect so much, but also our fellow humans.
A good reminder for sure. So maybe switching topics a little bit now, Anaïs, do you want to tell us about your project or your blog on whale scientists and sort of how that came about and what that's all about? Because I think we've definitely gotten questions from our listeners that if we'd known about this, we should have just sent them to you. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So whale scientists, so if you remember from a few minutes ago when I told you I used to be in Italy for a little bit, so I was not alone in my little internship in Italy, and I actually met someone I was rooming with at the time, and she was from America, and she still is actually, and her name is Naomi, and we became roommates and really good friends, and we always thought that we wanted to do something like that, talk about whales, because we're both huge whale nerds, and so we thought about this blog idea back in 2016, but we never felt legitimate to go through with it because we were only undergrads and we didn't feel like our voices mattered. But then we both started our PhDs, and at that point we were getting close to 2020, and we were thinking about it, and we were like, damn, you know what? Now we're PhD students. We can finally do this. And we got really excited about it. And then COVID hit. And that gave us kind of a bit of free time. And we were like, hey, you know what? Let's just finally do it. This blog idea that we've had. And it turned into a really fun adventure. And so basically, what we're trying to do with whale scientists, first, we're trying to talk about whales, of course, whales, seals, and dolphins, and even manatees. We do not discriminate. We love all mammals. And we're trying to share our passion for these marine mammals. But our goal was really to write everything as early career researchers and only try to feature early career researchers as writers on the blog and give tips to aspiring whale researchers and marine mammal researchers about how to become a marine mammal researcher, because that was something that we kind of had to figure out ourselves. I never found a guide on how to become a marine mammal researcher, and we kind of wanted to help other aspiring marine mammal researchers to reach their goals, basically. So we wrote a ton of little guides on how to find the right master project, how to become a whale scientist, what to do if you can't find the PhD of your dreams on killer whales, and other things like that, just to like help people find their ways, and get to their goals. And we also started to feature a lot of early career researchers that we met along the way, because we wanted to highlight the diversity in not only the people that do whale research and marine mammal research in general, but also the ways that they managed to do that. Because talking to specific people, we're like, this is crazy. You started your career doing music, and now you're studying dolphins in Japan? That was from my friend Liane, by the way. She's still studying dolphins in Japan.
That's very cool.
And it's freaking inspiring. So I was like, would you mind telling us how you got there? And so that's one of the stories. But we have like so many stories from super inspiring early career researchers that just kind of like made their own way, and they paved their own way into marine mammal research. And we thought it was really cool, and that was something to celebrate. So yeah, awesome. Whale scientist is all that. And then I got really into drawing infographics. So I got myself an iPad and started to draw things. And we started to really get into infographics on Instagram as well. So I think that that really is something that people appreciate. I think they like the little visual stories that we tell. So yeah, that's whale scientists.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, did you guys also start in 2020?
No, we started in 2014.
But we didn't start podcasting in 2014.
No, we started podcasting in 2019. Yeah.
Because I remember seeing, like, I think some of the first podcasts from back then. I can't remember if it was 2019, 2020. Yeah, very cool.
What is time?
Yeah. So before we head into our segments, I just wanted to bring up is it a conference? This is why I first found you on social media, was that there's a ecotoxicology conference summit symposium something coming up. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes, so that's the Canadian Ecotoxicology workshop coming in Victoria the first week of October. Actually, no, the second week, sorry, because October starts a little weird.
Yep.
So the second week of October, we're all headed, all the Canadian ecotoxicologists, we're headed to Victoria to talk about all things contaminants. And some colleagues and I are organizing a session there where researchers can come and present their new stuff on contaminants and marine mammals in Canada, but also elsewhere. We didn't want to be limited by borders. So we have some talks about everywhere. And the first part of the session is actually only dedicated to early career researchers.
Nice.
Oh, that's so cool.
Awesome.
But we really tried to like push the early career researchers and be like, come present your stuff. We're excited.
That's awesome.
And there's going to be a prize for the best student presentation.
Nice.
So I think it's really nice to like motivate students to come present their results because it can be really intimidating. And this is an academic conference, but hopefully having it be more like a little bit of a game with the prize at the end can motivate early career researchers to come present their stuff.
That is
very fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think super important, especially like as you said, so many people who are now early career researchers, started their PhD or were doing their PhD during the pandemic. So I think that a lot of those opportunities were probably limited to say the least.
Of course. Yeah, I cannot
A
tell you
team's presentation is very different.
Yeah. And like it is so much nicer to be in person because like trying to network across a screen. I don't know if you had to do any conferences at the beginning of COVID, but those were pretty dreadful. And the networking was really sad. So I'm really glad that we're all back in person.
Yeah, I was nice. A panelist on like a women in tech like networking event, and it was
nice.
Awful.
During the pandemic,
it was like 2020, like the beginning of 2021. And it was challenging.
Before we continue with the rest of the episode, we want to take a moment to tell you about how you can support our podcast and everything we do at Whale Tales.
You can join us by becoming a patron at patreon.com/whaletales. You can join for $1 a month at the porpoise level, $5 a month at the dolphin level, or $10 a month at the whale level.
And each level comes with a variety of perks, like answering polls, getting thank you postcards in the mail, which, for listeners who were listening, I think it was last month we realized that Patreon had not been telling us that people were signing up for postcard level or had switched into postcard level patrons, so we were really behind on postcards. Again, patrons, so sorry for that. They went in the mail today.
Hooray!
Yay! So they're on their way. But those are not the only perks. There is also access to extended interviews or extra stories that our guests share. And you can also produce your own Fun Flipper fact segment of the pod. Plus. We have more of our voices talking about cetaceans and science and nerdy things in 2 other podcasts, like Journal Club for our dolphin and whale level patrons, where every other month we read an article and then talk about it, as we are wont to do. And then Whale Tales Watches for our whale level patrons, where we watch a thing and then talk about it, as we are wont to do. And we're very silly and nerdy in both, and they're lovely. At least, I think so.
This month, we also have an extra whale tale for you, again, on Patreon. This one comes from us courtesy of the new Oceanography podcast, and it is from Dr. Alina Berg, who's an environmental scientist and evolutionary biologist, and is also the host of Something in the Water, which is a podcast by Pine Forest Media, who also produces Oceanography. Dr. Berg is going to share with us a beautiful encounter with the North Atlantic right whale. You can check out this story, plus a bunch of other extra whale tales that we have, over on our Patreon at the $1 a month level.
Thank you so much to all of our patrons. You are amazing, and we are so grateful for all of your support.
But if you aren't able to support us financially, don't worry, we still love you too. And there are lots of other things that you can do to help us out. So really the most important thing that anyone can do is leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, principally Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but really wherever you're listening to us. A, thank you for finding us, and B, if you can leave a review, please do, because it'll help more people find us. And you can also just tell your cetacean and science and podcast loving friends about us and the pod, and then they can listen too, and you'll have more things to talk about. It's a win-win.
You can also follow us on social media. We are at whaletails_org on Instagram, and you can find all of our handles on our website. Plus, you can send us your feedback there or on Spotify comments or on YouTube comments or wherever comments exist, so we can keep making the podcast even better. Okay, do you have anything else to add before Nicole bursts into song?
No, all good.
Amazing. Switching gears again. It is time for a fun flipper fact. We're going to hear your fun flipper fact. That's tonight's song. I love that. We would love to hear any fact. It doesn't have to be your favorite. I realize I freaked guests out about this in the past and made them feel very pressured.
That's why we started sending preparation emails.
But this is the section of the pod where we love hearing what is a fun flipper fact that you enjoy sharing at cocktail parties or nerdy get-togethers, or when you're just trying to impress your children at bedtime. Be like, hey, here's a thing that I know.
So if I was to try to impress my children about and like convince them to clean their ears, maybe I'll say that baleen whales, like the big humpback or fin whales, actually cannot clean their ears, but they still produce earwax. And so what they'll do is they'll keep producing earwax, and they'll form massive little earwax plugs that can reach, I believe it's around 10 inches long.
Oh
my gosh. We can actually use these. So of course we retrieve them from stranded animals, but we can retrieve these, and they're kind of like tree rings. We can go back in time and kind of see what's been going on with the hormones inside this whale, or contaminants or any other things. So it's kind of cool. And that's all happening inside the ear of your favorite whale. And they never clean it. So if you don't want to end up with a huge earwax plug like a big humpback whale, go clean your ears and I was going to say put a Q-tip in there, but that's not good. You can't put a Q-tip.
No, don't do that.
So never mind. Just clean your ears.
That was amazing.
That was really
Thank you so much for saying that.
great.
I will tell you, I don't know if this is specifically because of the two children that I have, or it might be true for all children. If I tell them that, it will do the exact opposite of making them want to clean their ears.
Yes.
They will, in fact, never ever clean their ears because they will say,
They will
I
want-
want to be just like a whale.
And also they'll want like a 10-inch long
10
earwax.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because while I
that
almost
gross
threw
when
up
you
in my
think
mouth
about
a little
it?
bit
Yeah.
when you told us
I
that.
know, it's
They
so
would
gross.
think that
Yeah.
is very cool.
7-year-old boy land.
Yeah. I think the thing that gets me is that, like, who was the first person to do that? Like, why?
Oh, like
why
to
were you,
realize
like,
that it was a thing. Yeah.
well, yeah, but like, why were you like pulling wax out of a stranded whale's ear, and then you're like, let's look at this and see what
Your guess is as good as mine.
was that about?
That's always I have
Amazing.
that question about so many things.
So many things.
true.
The first time they do a lot of things in science is like,
Yeah.
how did this come about?
I would love to hear the story behind.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was lovely.
Speaking of
Yeah.
stories, what an amazing segue. And now we come to the whale tale part of the
Yes.
podcast. And we've already heard some teases about stuff you've seen in Europe and also the killer whales, a little bit encounters that you've had, but we'd love to hear about a memorable encounter you've had at any point in your career or life.
Yeah. So I once babysat a killer whale calf in Iceland. So it was really sweet. It was one of these days where we were out on the boat. So I was working with the Icelandic Orca Project, who was one of my collaborators for my PhD. And we were out on the boat trying to get biopsies. And it was really foggy that day. And there was a group of killer whales just feeding on a ball of herring next to us. And it takes a lot of effort and coordination for these Icelandic killer whales to herd the herring into a tight ball. And then what will typically happen is that the big bull in the group will come and slap the fish, which kind of stuns the herring for a bit. And then all the whales will come and slurp the herring, which is kind of cool, actually. I kind of love that fact. But what happened that day is that while the adults were performing the herding, the mom left her calf with us at the rib boat. And so the calf was just kind of bored and looking for stuff to do. So it was just like playing around the boat, blowing bubbles and like kind of popping its head out. It was being really curious. And at some point, so we didn't have a microphone, like a hydrophone in the water. But I think at some point its mom was probably calling it to come eat because it would go and rejoin the group. And then as the herring ball moved around, every time they had to herd the herring into a ball again, the mom would like bring back the kid, the little calf, to the boat and go herd the ball. And well, in the meantime, the calf was keeping busy and giving us like the cutest little moments. And then it was off again with its parents. I thought it was really cool.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. I know, that was so endearing. I was just like, oh, the whole time. Really it's very sweet.
Love it. And yeah, this is where I would normally ask for a call to action, but we did that already. Yeah.
Awesome.
This was fantastic. Thank you so much for...
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, for talking to us about this because, like, again, it is a bummer subject, but it's an important subject for us to think about, but also for the overall health of the cetaceans that we love so much and the ecosystems that we find. And this is going to be one of the things I feel like that will be studied, that will be looked at more because we've already done so much stuff, so much work on these species, and we haven't found the answer yet. So we need to keep digging.
Absolutely.
And so chemistry is unfortunately the answer to...
Unfortunately. I used to hate chemistry, but now I'm obsessed with it. So.
So I'm glad that you were there, because if it was up to us, I don't know what we'd be doing.
Well, maybe we would have figured out the sort of potion joy of it.
Maybe.
So I love that.
Making potions is really the best part of it. When you're working with like tons of chloroform, it's just like you're just thinking about the danger of it, and you're like, "Ooh, I'm making my little potion." I love it.
As biology all the way.
Yeah, always. But this is good.
Related.
You can do both, and it's still important, and you still get to go out and jump on seals or something along those lines.
And hope they poo.
And hope they poo. Just stand there and will seals to poo. That's why
I really think that the jumping on them might help with the pooing, because that'd be very scary.
Sometimes when we approach, we can tell, like, if there's a fresh poo, we can tell it maybe we spooked them a little bit. They didn't expect to see people, and so we're like, oh shit, like running away. And you're like, oh,
literally.
Treasure, thank you. Thank you.
Amazing.
This was the point all along. Yeah. What an amazing note to end this. Oh, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. It's been fun.
Well, I think that's about that time where we would like to hear your thoughts on this episode, or any episode, or anything. Primarily cetacean related, but still. You can visit our website, whale-tales.org, and find links to all of our social media handles so that you can drop us a line.
You can also head over to our website to subscribe to the podcast, learn more about supporting us and becoming a patron, and check out over 1,500 whale, dolphin, and porpoise stories.
That's whale-tales.org, tales like the stories, not tales like the animal.
You can find Anaïs and Whale Scientists on Instagram. Anaïs is at Anaïs Remili, ANAIS REMILI, and Whale Scientists is at Whale Scientists, all one word.
And if you've seen a cetacean, we would love to add your story to our library. You can click the share link on our website, or you can contact us on social media at whaletales_org, or you can email us a voice memo and tell us all about your incredible cetacean encounter.
Finally, we want to acknowledge that we and Anaïs recorded today's episode on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples and the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Sianu, and Sauk nations.
Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope you have a whaley great day.